So, Sam, it is a pleasure. Now that the recording is on, it is a pleasure, and it was a pleasure beforehand as well, to catch up with you after so long. It's great to see the return of Howl and The Hum after a while. Obviously, a lot of people fell in love with the band through human contact and through your tireless gigging for many, many years. So, my first question for you, before I talk about the new record, is the band has changed a lot over the last few years.
Mm.
Obviously, some people know that, some people don't, but things have changed. You know, the dynamic has shifted. What have been the biggest challenges for you, Sam, over the last few years reinventing? Because that's what it looks like from the outside, reinventing Howl and the Hum, and I guess your identity within the band.
Yeah, it's a strange experience, isn't it? I found, well, I don't know if this was the case for a lot of people, but maybe COVID and lockdown was a case of transformation for a lot of people. A bit like stepping into a weird little cocoon, and then you come out not necessarily any further developed, but you definitely come out a different creature at the end of it. And yeah, we did as an entity, the band did. The band went through several different transformatory periods over COVID. We were, you're right, gigging like really quite tirelessly for years and years and years leading up to the first album. And then COVID hit and we were just sort of stuck in our living rooms, didn't really know what to do. And then sort of one by one, the band transformed. People grow up and move on, I guess, is probably the easiest way to say all of that. Like, I won't go into the particular details of why everyone is no longer in the band, because I feel like that if anyone wants to know that, I'm sure they can find out from the band members themselves. But yeah, it came out the end of it with one. I'm amazed that the band still exists in any form because COVID wanted to be the beast that sort of ransacked music. Like I
Mhm.
don't know if you remember when Rishi Sunak was telling everyone to retrain, that we should all retrain and
Mhm.
get jobs in big tech or whatever it was.
Yep.
So we that was the barrel that we were staring down. So the fact that we came to make a second album is enough for me. That to me is sort of the real championship point. That's my um what would the word be? It's almost like a religious experience. My redemption
Right.
is the fact that I got to make a second album under the moniker of the Howl and The Hum. And there was a point where it wasn't going to be called the Howl and The Hum. It was going to be called my name, or we tried looking for a different name, and we thought about putting the Howl and The Hum to bed and starting afresh. But I am very proud of the songs that I wrote before the first album. Very proud of the songs that I wrote for the first album, and I'm still the same person writing the songs for the second album. And a lot of the songs were written over the transitionary period. So in a way, I'm a completely different person, and in a different way, it's still being written by the same dude with the same intentions, which is
Yes.
a strange experience because it's like I guess through all our walks of life, we put on different shells and different skins um, through different years and different periods of our lives. But yeah, this is the one that's happening at the moment, and it's a little bit different, but the core is the same, I think.
Yeah, the new skin. I like that, Sam. I think one of the things that I kind of wanted to ask you in this sort of reflective period, just sort of looking back, to look forward. Has your definition of success changed? Obviously, you talked to me off record about, doing different types of work. Obviously, there was, a great period, obviously millions of streams, all that kind of stuff, international touring as you've been able to do, and now, obviously about to do with the new dates. But has your definition of success changed from when you started the band to where you are
Um,
now?
That's a really good question. Well, I think we were almost lumped with success. I don't think we knew that the our first single, which is still our probably our biggest song, was going to do as well as it did. But it did. It ticked a lot of boxes, like algorithmically, and to some Spotify curators and things like that. So I don't think I ever knew what success was. And then when I was lumped with it, I don't know if I entirely appreciated it for what it was, because then you take a few years off like I did. COVID was a really depressing period for me. I was really down. I couldn't really write anything. So when I finally, you know, relearned everything and came back to it, I realized that the one thing that I shouldn't have done was stop. And that success demands that you sort of keep your foot even a little bit on the accelerator pedal. But like I say, I guess success has changed its definition because I never really knew what it was. But in contrast to that, I think the main thing that I'm grateful for is the fact that I'm still able to keep going. And the only thing that I need at the moment is my own sense of validation. Maybe the validation of my friends that I haven't completely lost the plot and I'm not just releasing 45 minutes of like me farting into a microphone. Because I don't think that's what the second album is. But to me, now success means something that I am pleased with, something that ticks my own boxes rather than necessarily anything external.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think so. So it's more for you and it's personal to you. And I really feel that like you've obviously been through quite a lot as an artist and as a band, and to go through those streams and stuff and get all that success. It's a lot. It feels like again you maybe didn't appreciate it at the time because it's a whirlwind, isn't it? You probably didn't expect God Manchester Chinese Bridge to do that well, and then Human, and then the album itself blew up
Mm.
as well. You know, I think it's a beautiful record, and but I think a lot of that stuff happened. It sounds like you weren't, not that you weren't ready for it, but you weren't expecting it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, we were expecting none of it, and the fact that COVID came along and then just sort of like swept it all along. It's all been incredibly strange. And at the end of the day, I haven't really expected for anyone to listen to any of the new music, but there's been a really great
Mm.
response from it. There's still like a really dedicated core fan base out there that I'm so grateful for because you realize the older that you get that the tighter that the better your solid, the more concrete, I guess, your sort of solid foundation of support, the better you will always be able to do because you've got people there that will always listen to the stuff that you've got. As long as you're putting stuff out like above a standard that they expect, you've got this core group of fans who will sort of keep you afloat no matter where you go. And that's the thing I've been most grateful for, you know.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. What was it like building this record? Then obviously building the band as well. Obviously, again doing you've always been a great connector as I've known you and from other people, being able to create music, but then also connect with other people to create it. So what's it been like? You know, developing this record, but getting a new, fresh band together, and kind of the next evolution of the Howl and the Hum as you head into
Well,
same mistake twice.
I guess over COVID, um, things started to sort of become a little bit more independent. I was the one that started organizing everything in the band, whereas previously it had been done by a different band
Mm.
member. And so through that, I realized that I was the sort of one in control of my own ship. So I started to write a lot more songs, a little more introspectively. They felt a little more independent. So the band sort of turned into more. I mean, it's always been an outlet for the way that I see the world and the way that I understand things through music. But I guess it turned into even more of that. Like this album is all about a very unique and individual perspective. Again, quite a lonely voice in a busy world.
Mm.
And so I think it sounds like that. And I think although I got a lot of friends to help on this album, it feels like an expansive project now, as opposed to the first album felt very much like four people getting a lot of things wrong, but getting a lot of things right as well. And any of the music that we did with the four of us, with the previous lineup, did feel like I guess, a statement, a band. Whereas this album feels a lot more like my voice. It feels a lot more like a lot of the things that I want to say and a lot of the ways that I see the world. And that was then improved upon by a variety of sources and a variety of contributors and collaborators from all walks of life, from like people that I've known for years to people that I've only met in the last couple of years. And it created an expansive sound that doesn't necessarily limit itself to one genre.
Mm.
And then in November, when we go out, we do already have the live touring band, and it draws so much from that collaborative experience, and it feels very uh, communal. It feels like it's not just going down one avenue; it is drawing from a few different places, and I think it makes this exciting, like living, breathing beast where you're not entirely sure where it's going to go next, and that really excites me.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well, and I think there's a couple of songs I want to highlight from the new record. But that key word that you use there, introspection, I've always felt that about your writing and the music, but particularly here, much more. If I use the word stripped back, much more you. It felt
Mm.
like when I was listening to it, I was listening to you rather than a band. And I don't mean to be, You know, to just sort of piggyback off what you were saying before, it felt like I was sitting in a room, you know, with you playing the songs and you talking, if that makes sense, you know. And I
Mm,
think it's really cool. And you know, you got pale blue dot there, and the sort of desire, want to be loved by everyone all the time. And
mm.
there's a lovely little quote in the PR that reads that you thought that these lyrics are almost too direct. And I like that. So if I was to ask you sort of the key differences, and obviously you mentioned, you know, 4 people to now you, but the key differences for you on an emotional level from human contact to Same Mistake Twice to where your head is at on tracks like Pale Blue Dot, you know, where are you at the moment? How do you feel emotionally?
Right now, I'm doing much better than probably than I was when I was writing the lyrics to Pale Blue Dot. And Pale Blue Dot was strangely one of the first, especially the chorus to that song was one of the first lyrics that sort of inspired the rest of the album.
Mm,
Because again, I keep coming back to COVID, and I think it's kind of important because I feel like a lot of the insecurities that this album about came through from COVID, and maybe were underlying already, but they were from people sitting around in their rooms and judging and being judged by being on their phones all the time and being on the internet and being witness to that really poisonous online rhetoric that demands that we make a judgment within an instant and demands that we see other people make judgments, you know, in that very second. And I find that fascinating and disgusting in equal measure. um I think the idea that we want to be loved by everyone all the time is it's a joke that started the rest of the album because you know the I think when I was young I was like, yeah, that is what I want. I want to create something that everyone on the planet will enjoy and not one person will dislike. And then the older you get, you're just like, okay, you know what, that might be a little bit far-fetched. And it's going into the far-fetchedness of that idea that maybe we it's okay to fuck up, and it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to be anxious, and it's okay to get things wrong. It's okay to make those mistakes because those mistakes are the things that make you you. They separate you from the pack, but also it's not necessary that you're going to be judged upon all of them. Like there is, like we're not getting that sort of St. Peter's Gate analogy
mm.
happening in every walk of life. Um, and so that's what, yeah, that's where Pale Blue Dot came from. Right now, luckily, I'm doing much better. I did have some concerned messages from family when No Calories and Cocaine
Yes.
came out because I got some younger cousins who probably shouldn't have heard that song, um, and a lot of people worrying about my nutritional advice as a result of that song. But
Yeah.
yeah, don't worry, I'm doing much better now.
Good, good. And it's good. It's good to have that out there. I think there's another track on there called "No One Has to Know," and
Mm,
I was fascinated by a couple of the you know, again, when I was researching for this, fascinated by your process on this. It feels like you're coming to terms with the fact that it's okay to fuck up. Like you said, it's okay to make mistakes, but there's also an error that this one's particularly interesting. Like you know, again, maybe some guilt in there. I don't know, maybe things I've picked up as a listener. But when you were writing "No One Has to Know," what was that? Was that catharsis for you? Was that just pure introspection? What was that?
That's probably one of the darkest songs on the album. I'm
Mm,
glad you picked up on that one. That's probably one of the darker ones because I don't know if there's any redemption for that character. I don't know if that, and I don't know if that character wants any. That character, like I think the rest of the songs, at least they say something or they say they've done something, and then they immediately want people to know that they're sorry about it. They immediately want people to know that, oh, I'm sorry, I fucked up. Can you forgive me? Whereas I don't know if that character is even asking for forgiveness. He just wants to be nihilistic. He just wants to sin and
mm,
be and sort of go for his carnal urges. And yeah, you're right. Guilt. I think that probably comes from a place of guilt, but it's guilt that as a form of lust, which
right.
is yeah. I sent it to a friend recently, and she told me that the song is far too sexy to be on that record, which I thought was really funny. Because to me, that's like a part of it. That's a part of the facet of these characters. It's another um, short story in this anthology, and it's a weird, sexy one. And at times, it feels like it sticks out. And there was a conversation in which we were discussing it not being left in the album, but I'm really glad we did because I think it shows that really strange bit, um, that really strange part uh, of insecurity.
Mm.
and how guilt plays into that. Um, and yeah, it came out as like a sexy little swagger song as well. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the characters there, Sam. I don't know if we've ever touched on this. I know we've done an interview in the past, but when you're writing characters, is there any element of your? I mean, I don't know because I feel like there might be elements of you in there, and drawing from that. But like when you're talking about these characters, is it easy for you to put them as characters, or is that about? I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. You becoming comfortable with those elements of yourself that you put into the characters.
I think it's a little bit of both. I guess. Well, so I was talking to a friend about this recently, who's a writer,
Mm,
and he said something really interesting. He said, "You don't necessarily have to have experienced something to write about it, but the emotion has to be true."
right. Yeah.
Um, I love that because it just means you can facilitate any storyline, any linear narrative. But the only way that it's really going to appeal to someone is if you felt the little urges and the desires at the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Um, the any of the underlying feelings, thoughts, emotions. I think you have to have felt at least a shadow of them to be able to put it into a song. But it's not necessarily me in all of these songs. I'm not going to pretend that all of these songs are things that I could do, or have said, but they are at times the sort of like a thought that will cross my mind, that you see from afar. You can laugh at it, but it's still a thought that's there. And
Yeah.
I think that to me that's really interesting because they're like the characters that occupy your head. They may not be the ones that you present as, but it doesn't mean they're not in there. And
Yeah.
they're the guys that I'm reaching towards. They're the guys that I'm trying to portray.
Yeah. It's a really
Um,
interesting. It's an interesting take on songwriting. Actually, you don't. And it's one of the things that I've found in a weird relational point in counseling. Like people say, well, how can you counsel someone who's experienced these things if you've not um if you've not experienced it yourself? But actually, just having that core emotion, having
mm,
experienced even a part of that emotion, can give you the skills you need to accurately put that across. It feels like that's what you've said there. I don't know if that
yes, yeah,
purpose.
yeah. That's absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, just interesting to get that sort of approach to your songwriting there. Another song question, and then we'll sort of start to round up. There's another one on there that kind of reminded me melodically of the first time I listened to God Manchester. It's called "I Love the Boy," and I have a question for you in a minute about your voice and where you found it, and we'll get to that in a second. But can you talk me through that? Because again, feels like a very emotive, very introspective, but again, and almost, I don't know, almost pained. I don't know if I've interpreted that. Again, there's also some hope in the melody for me as a listener. What were you going through when you wrote that one?
So that one actually came about almost entirely melodically. This one was based on a demo that Connor had, that we were messing around with in our studio. So Connor, who until recently was in the band, he was in the original lineup. He sent this demo over, and I loved it. I loved the melody, and I sort of did this really scratchy vocal take over it, and it was a completely mumbled song. But the song then became something else to do with the album that comes through is about the breakup of the band. Like it's a thing that I'm not going to ignore.
Hmm.
Is about the way that we all grew up together and the little things that overhang between all of us. Like I don't think anyone is going to pretend that a breakup of a band is easy, especially when you've been together like 7 years and you went through all the stuff that we did. Um, And I wanted to romanticize that and I wanted to put that into a song. And I think that's where a lot of these feelings came from. There are emotional and romantic situations in real life outside of the band that also built this narrative. But one of the main lyrics that I wanted to put on this album and was in this song is that I to love you so long was like holding on to water in my hands, because that's one of the things that really kind of sparks my head, is the idea that you might be so infatuated with something today that you look back on your life 5 years from now and you're not entirely sure what it is that you're holding in those photographs. You don't
Mm,
know the person that you were and the person that you were loving at that point. And I
mm,
find that fascinating. They're like they're snapshots of a time, of a moment. And I think the I love the boy. I love the boy as a boy became a man line
mm.
implies all the things that change as you're loving them. I think that's one of the big things that happens through this album as well. I think time is sort of another character on this record, and the playing out of time over the course of a song is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
So the song started out with these sort of melodic mumblings, and they came to turn into this like. I love songs that take place over a long time. I think God Manchester does that as well, but
Yeah.
where you get all these like moments of times, like snapshots of particular moments in someone's life, and you can sort of flip in and out of them. And it tells like a much bigger story. I love films and books and stories that do that, and I've always wanted to try that in music. So
Mm,
I guess
mm.
that was that attempt to that one.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll squeeze this one in because I think it's worth asking just off the back of that. What are some of your key visual influences, artistic influences, other music, anything that you, I'm assuming, and I don't, well, I'm assuming that it's different from, say, Human Concept, but what are you inspired by now on a visual level, whether art, film, etc.? Are there anything is there anything that's consistent for you as an influence in that respect?
Um, I love brutalism and go and stand in the Barbican in London for very long periods of time at times. Um, I kind of romanticize some of the most brutalist parts of the British countryside, and had a really weird long running joke about the East Midlands Parkway power station with some friends. And I think those odd, enormous concrete structures and things like ring roads and roundabouts that populate British scenery and sort of British urbanity are such a huge part of my life, but they so often get ignored. Um, I don't really know why, but I remember I had a really big long list of all the things I wanted to include on this album, and so much of it was the really boring like service stations and like a BP carriage down the road from me,
Yeah.
and the chippy at the bottom of my hill, and like a really late night. One of them was a 24-hour Chinese supermarket, um, which is a fascinating place. Going to try and find Holy Basil at 3 in the morning. So it's usually like quite dimly lit phone screen blue light places
Yeah.
where you get the like weirdest parts of people's souls and the strangest parts of people's evenings. I love those sorts of places. I'm sure
Yeah.
there'll be more that I'll remember as soon as I put the phone down, but they're the ones that come to mind right now.
No, I appreciate it. I always think that I always thought your music one day, could be used in that sort of soundtracking, some kind of, yeah, again, like an artistic Lynchian style, or British industrial, I'm trying to think of the best sort of style of film, but like um a surrealist British intense film, or something something out of David Lynch, or John Godper, or something like that. That
Oh wow.
that kind
Yeah.
of raw British, or but also kind of surreal. I always thought that would be good. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. Before we round up, then, Sam, I wanted to ask you about your voice, and it's a weird question. I only ask it to certain people, but where did you find your voice? Where did you find out you could do what you can do? Because there are wonderful high moments, there are really beautiful lower moments, softer moments. There's intense moments in your vocal. So can you tell me when you first discovered that you could do what you do with your voice?
um, that's a good question. This is strange. I was speaking to someone about this morning, but I actually got I auditioned to be in my school choir when I was 11, and I got denied. And I think I've taken it as a sort of revenge streak ever since year 7 to become a better singer, so that I can prove it to Mr. Olive all these years later.
Mm,
But I was a um, busker and an open mic player in York for so many years
mm.
that I learned thousands of songs, literally thousands of songs doing that. And I think that improved my voice tenfold. And then recording it a lot and listening to a lot of artists that I adore and trying to copy them. because I think a lot of art is just mimicry,
Mhm.
because it shows sort of devotion. It shows your love of another artist. And I grew up listening to like Radiohead were my band when I was a kid, so I grew up just trying to copy Tom York. And I think at times I can still sound like him.
Yeah,
And hopefully it's also taken a little bit of a tangent as well, because I want to I obviously want to be my own thing, and I also don't want to end up just copying Mr. York. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of theft and mimicry and dedication, but also trying to whittle out your own path through the bushes.
yeah, yeah. I obviously it is a very it's a very cool vocal that I think is uniquely yours. Obviously, there are elements of Tom York in there, but I've always admired your vocal ability, and it's just interesting to get your take on it. Before we've got three more, and two we'll do the promo stuff. The first one I've got is around a word you used or a couple of words used in the press release, and it's the concept of deathbed songwriting and the idea that this is this you're writing up this record as if you want to say everything you know everything you wanted to have said without worrying about the consequences. Now you're a young lad, right? Like why do you want to write a record as if you're on your deathbed?
Uh,
Is
well,
it
there's
for
a few moments.
is
There's,
it for you or is it for is that for you or is it for somebody else?
I guess. Well, I guess there's a few moments on the record where the characters are faced with death, whether it be crime scenes or like uh, at the end of their life. Um, and I think there's a lot of things that we leave unsaid, especially in relationships in terms of the people that we love. And I think a few of the things that people say when they're on their deathbed is they wish they'd spoken more and they wish they'd spoken to more friends and they wish they'd told the truth more. And there's a few moments on this album about lying and about keeping things in and the devastating effects of that. So I think I would rather people knew how I felt about them. I don't know if I went all the way on this album like I could have done. It's not. I haven't. I haven't done a Taylor Swift, and I haven't done a Sun Kill Moon. um, but I've tried to turn what I considered honesty into something beautiful, and hope that came through on this album. Strangely, I remember having that deathbed songwriting thought when I was listening to the Self Esteem record, because I thought she put so many of those well, she writes a lot of her songs on her phone, doesn't she? Her notes, and she posts the notes online. And I love that because that's what I wanted to do with this album. I wanted it to feel like the those late night thoughts that you have that you can only note down on your phone because it's the only because you're not going to find a pen or a pencil at that time. So you just grab your phone and you note it down and then you fall back asleep. All those weird little haunting thoughts are the things that interest me the most. So they're the little deathbed moments, the things that you would rather say before you died and have them out in the air rather than die with them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a good lesson for people listening, I think, to say what you need to say, because again, not everybody gets that opportunity. And I too have researched, which sounds really morbid actually when I say it, but you do hear a lot of, I wish I'd spoken to more people. I wish I'd told X, Y, and Z person I love them.
Yeah,
And so you
yeah,
have this record now as a document of how you feel at this time about
yeah,
these people. I think that's beautiful, Sam. So I
yeah.
appreciate that. Okay, well, we've got to the end of the interview, and it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. In terms of a message to support us as we head into this new record, Same Mistake Twice, which is coming out in September. Um, what is your message to the fans of Howl and the Hum past, the fans of Howl and the Hum present, and the fans of Howl and the Hum future as we head into this new part of your musical existence?
Um, Thank you to all of you. And if any of you lie in each category of uh, past, present, and future listeners, I think I owe you at least a badge, at least at least a poster of some kind, maybe a mug or a soup spoon. I owe you some kind of merchandise, but I hope my gratitude has come across over the course of this interview because it's the one thing that makes me keep going. Is music is the only thing that really keeps me in this world. And I think that if I didn't have anyone to play it to, if I didn't have any supporters, then I wouldn't do it anymore. So that's it's the reason I'm here. So that's why I keep going. So thank you to everyone, um, past, present, and future.
Awesome. Well, very, very glad you're here, and I look forward to the next steps. This is the final part of the interview, Sam, where we check if I've done my job properly. Is there anything I have missed today that you would like to plug, or anything else you would like to promote as we finish up?
I don't think so. You've done a beautiful job there, Dom. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure as well, I have to say. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's good to see you, man.